What's up, dudes? Welcome back to another episode of Rhomas Men's Team. Pretty simple. We are a group of guys helping each other make progress towards each other's goals. If you're new to the channel, awesome and welcome. If you want to help support the channel and join our pro team, head over to rhomasteam.com/pro, where you can contribute to us on a donation basis. We also give you access to exclusive content, mastermind groups, etc., etc. So anyway, hope you enjoy this episode, and we'll see you on the team.
We're live. Yes, I was telling you, I have a nesting pregnant wife. What's up, dude?
Aw,
okay. Yeah, it's very
adorable.
Sweet. Very sweet. Okay.
Hi, Wesley.
It's just for boys.
Hey, Brett, how you doing?
Shut up, boys. The more you do this, the longer I stay here.
Go ahead.
Hey, Wes.
Hey, Brett, how you doing? I like your hair.
Wes said he likes your hair. Come on, Britt, please, for the love of God, stop.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, seriously.
I'm done.
I'm gonna rage in a second.
Matthew, don't make me pause a second.
Get out. Buzz off. All right. I'm kidding.
You better be kidding. I'm about to flop you up.
Seriously, I'm starting. Get out of here.
Bye.
All right, here we go. We're in. Yeah, I was telling Wes I have a nesting pregnant wife, so they start to destroy the inside of your house. They go through. It's like an urge pregnant women get where they have to start rearranging every single thing in the house. It's kind of nice, actually.
Yeah?
Cleaning up for once around here. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, boy. There was a funny, comedy skit. I don't know the guy. You probably know him on YouTube, and my buddy sent it to me. It's like, when a mom freaks out when people are coming over for dinner or something, she turns into, an absolute Nazi. Not saying that's what Britt's doing, but it's hilarious. Yeah.
Dude.
So what's going on, brother?
Not much, man. Yeah, everyone's digging the turtleneck, dude. I'll be honest. This is this is part of my final formation. It's turtleneck. I think turtlenecks are big into it. Flute, turtleneck. I need to get some sort of I'm looking into some sort of tool belt that I can use just for like to put my flute in and other stuff that I need. But dude, the turtleneck big.
Final formation. You're like that dude. You ever seen the Black Alien Project?
No.
Oh, dude, this is right up your alley, man. Have you guys listening? Have you ever heard of the Black Alien Project? I'm gonna look it up for you right now. Yeah, so it's this guy who, I think it's the Black Alien Project, who he's turning himself into an alien. Here.
What? What the fuck? Okay.
Oh, yeah. He's hard, and apparently he's saying he's only at 31%. Dude, it's wild. So he just cut off his two fingers.
These are permanent changes?
Oh, yeah, dude. It's wild, man.
That's insane.
Yeah. And he's putting in he's putting in these structures in his face and in his arms and everything, so it changes the landscape of the skin. Isn't that wild, man?
What? That's insane. I mean, I guess that's cool. I don't know. I don't know what to make of that project.
No, dude. And he just got his teeth sharpened. I'm trying to see if I can find some other pictures for you. Oh yeah.
Where'd you stumble across this?
It was on the Joe Rogan pod. He was not on the Joe Rogan podcast, but he talked about it. So he just got his two fingers removed.
What?
See that? Oh yeah. So now he's got a claw type of thing going on.
That's pretty cool.
Isn't that nuts?
That's insane. Yeah. That's that's one thing that that's something to get into.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you look can you see the little craters and the dimples and everything he's put into his skull? Yeah.
Good
wild,
God,
dude.
Man.
And he was a good-looking guy, man.
Yeah, he was jacked. I mean, dude, now he looks even better. Now he's an alien.
That's true. That is very true. Yeah. So I
love the thought of you just thinking about the Black Alien Project.
Yeah, dude. That's one of the things. The Joe Rogan podcast, I do enjoy it because it exposes me to things that just do not come across my universe at all, at all. So I like it for that in that respect.
True. No, that's definitely true, dude. So what's going on this week? What's the plan?
So I'm doing a lot of Christmas stuff this week, man. I'm here with my girlfriend's family, and I'm trying to do the same thing I kind of did for Thanksgiving, take a bit off the gas pedal for work. Actually, probably 80% off for work. Still doing some stuff, just wrapping some stuff up, wrapping some trades up for the end of this year. With Omicron's making it very interesting in the markets today, which is fascinating to me. Yeah. So yeah, it's just very interesting. I mean, I could talk for hours about psychology and just how important it is. By the way, if anybody wants to read along, I'm going to start to read the book called Mindsight. It's just absolutely fascinating. The reason I love finance, especially the stock market, is because it's human psychology in numerical form. So as soon you see uncertainty represented in the market, you see panic represented in the market. So it's very fascinating to me. So that's what I'm saying. I'm concentrating on the holidays, but I also have to, might have to execute some things for clients coming up here soon.
I got you. Has there been a study of like how is there a pattern, and I don't if this is like a financial hot water thing, don't answer it, but like, is there a study as to how things tend to bounce back, like from panic to like non-panic, and where things fluctuate, or does it kind of like change and things just stay there for a while? Yeah,
so it's very interesting. So again, disclaimer, I'm not recommending anything to anybody, just having a casual conversation. So if you look, or like for me, as more of like, let's say an opportunist, right? Like you want prices to decline as much as possible so you can take advantage of the opportunity. So if you study, right, like going back, through the Great Depression, well, you have checks and balances that were put in place along the way. So now you have, at least relative recent history, dramatically less severe swings and for less duration, if that makes sense. So if you take an example like COVID or even like 2008 was a little longer, but it wasn't like as severe as, let's say, like a Great Depression where the markets dipped by, I think it was like, depending on what benchmark you're looking at, like 90%, which is crazy. Think about that, dude. So I mean, there's a lot of studies on it to answer your question, but the problem is eventually people, like, it's the same thing with every industry, but especially fitness industry and finance, that you have enough marketers in the space to create confusion, like just enough confusion to get people to start acting weird, for people to come into your house and tell you that you should start eating bacon to lose weight, or to be healthy, right? Like, that would be a joke. Like literally, if you and I were like just joking about dieting, be like, yeah, like it'd be crazy, right? If we just told people to eat bacon and they thought it'd be healthy, right? And then all of a sudden, right, like if you do enough marketing around it, you put in enough books, or you have enough quote like references to like studies, and you give it a good origin story, all of a sudden, like people are eating bacon, even despite the fact that, what was the Dr. Atkins, who created the Atkins diet, died from heart disease, right? Like, so the same exact thing happens in finance. You get people doing very weird things, and then it's the whole thing, like you can't tell right and wrong by counting heads, but that's how most people tell right and wrong. So if enough people say it to them, and it doesn't even have to be a lot, by the way, it's like the number's like 4. Like if 4 people say it to you, then you end up doing something like that. So it's very fascinating, man.
Yeah, it is interesting, man. That's all, especially just seeing the patterns, because like you were saying, it can be perceived as like, oh my God, it's crashing, everything's bad. But then there's other people who are like, well, I've kind of tended to my piggy bank, so I'm going to kind of get into some of these things while they're down. And for some people, they're like, hell yeah, it's crashing. This is awesome. So.
If you look at the psychological impact of FOMO, I mean, that's enormous in certain asset classes, or just the life in general. That enough 4 people are telling you that they've made massive amounts of money or lost massive amounts of weight or whatever, and then all of a sudden, right, like you're fully in. It's very fascinating, man. That's what Warren Buffett says. It's not greed that runs the world; it's envy.
That actually makes sense. The thing I've been hearing about a lot now and they keep coming up, and I'll be honest, the same thing happened to me with Bitcoin. I knew people talking about Bitcoins, like back when they were like $600, and like I knew like weird dudes who were like, yeah, I have like 20 of them, stuff like that. That's all fine and well, but I'm hearing now, and I was like, that sounds just too weird to me. Then I heard about now people are fucking constantly chewing my ear about NFTs. And no one can explain it to me. Every time, like, how does it work? One guy explained it, and I was like, dude, I'll be honest, I'm not being a dick. That sounds exactly like a pyramid scheme. But again, I don't want to drag you into financial stuff. But I'd be curious. No, we can maybe it will be, maybe it will turn out to be a thing where, like, like again, I could have bought Bitcoins when they were like worth nothing. And I genuinely don't really kick myself about it because I'm like, I don't care. But I'm kind of more happier. Like, really what makes me happy is working on projects. Like, that's what makes me happy. I've had money fluctuate up and down around me, and I'm like, obviously I try to keep it up so I can, like, do stuff. But it's only so that I can continue working on my projects. So, like, that's it.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
And Kaizen said he posted an explanation video about
on
NFTs.
NFTs.
Nice.
Hell yeah. So I think a really good rule. Oh, sorry, I cut you off.
No, that's it.
A really good rule of thumb that I stick to personally is, like, my entire wealth plan for me is create value, then invest the cash that I've made from that value creation to invest in the value creation of others, if that makes sense. That's it. Like, at a high level, that is purely it. Like, commit to creating value. That's part one. And then invest in value creation. That's part two. In my opinion, like, for me, if one of those is off, you're done. Right? Mm-hmm. So, for instance, like, I don't want to win the lottery because that would be me not creating value. Right? And it also would not be investing in value creation, because there's no value created there other than just the euphoria that one could feel from having nothing and then having something.
You saying they don't benefit older Pennsylvanians? I know what you're talking about.
Dude, isn't that ridiculous?
Yeah, it's insane. It's like, that's like saying slot machines benefit older Pennsylvanians. Like, okay.
It's crazy. Like, it's illegal to run gambling in certain states and in certain areas, and especially, like, privatized gambling, I believe. And the government has, like, the biggest gambling mechanism in the world. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts, man. And this is kind of what I've been thinking about. So it's, and again, it's like, if people want to chase these areas, it's like, knock yourself out. It's fine on some Western frontier, have fun. But like, here's this. It kind of hits on this idea that I was actually just, I was writing about this morning. Let me make sure I get my turtleneck. So the idea is when you're trying to answer, like, what do I actually want with my life? When you're sitting here, you don't know what you want. Someone's like, hey, you can make $100,000 selling blah 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 blahs. It's like, yeah, that sounds exciting. And again, probably awesome to make a bunch of money on that stuff. I'm not putting that down. But, like, so say you're like, someone's like, what do you want in life? I want a house. I want to have, like, be able to have kids in there, a nice school district, all that stuff. You're 25 years old. If someone were to be like, boom, here it is. Mm-hmm. It's like, is that a good thing? Is that necessarily a good thing? It's like, the thing I was thinking about is, like, when you want a thing, there's the thing, the house, the job. But what you really want, and you don't realize most times, is the inner transformation that occurs upon the quest you embark on to get that very thing. You know what I mean? Like, if you just hand people the things they want with no inner change in their part, most likely it'll fall apart, or, they'll just go, oh, now I'm just the same old dude in a different house. Someone just came and built a new setting behind me, and I'm just, same old dude, same old problems. So that's something I was thinking about a lot today. And, like, how do you kind of tie in, along with goals, how do you kind of be cognizant of, like, the inner change that you kind of need to culminate within yourself to kind of be able to kind of hold those things down? I want a big ranch. Well, can you take care of a big ranch? No. Right. Well, then your fucking ranch is going to turn into, whatever a ranch turns into, and it's not a jungle. I don't know. But it's like, that's something I've been thinking about a lot.
Did you hear that cough?
No.
Oh, sweet. All right, good. Because I tested it one time, and you said you heard it. Yeah. I had done that a lot on, like, Zoom meetings with investors, and I thought, that's like, oh, shit.
Yeah, I did.
So I think a couple things. Jim Rohn has a really good quote. It says, don't set a goal to be a millionaire for the $1 million. Set a goal to be a millionaire because of who you will have to become a millionaire. Mm-hmm. And there's a whole bunch of, like, studies around this. If you look at people who won lotteries, it's like 70 to 80% of them give back the money within a handful of years, like, regardless of how much money it actually is. It's pretty crazy. And there's also studies, I believe, maybe this is just a quote, that if, like, you took the money away from everybody, right, like, eventually it would land back in the same millionaires and billionaires' pockets, just because they know how to play the game. And this is why, if you look at studies of people who, like, very successful business people who go bankrupt, right, then they get on top of the mountain, a handful of years later. They just know the skills. It's no different than if, like, you took LeBron James out of the NBA, right, for a year or two, and then he came back, right? He still has the skill. And then plus I think there's just an element of, like you're saying, Matt, like if you could imagine it's like all of a sudden you said bam and you had what you wanted. To me, it's like most people want that trophy. Like I think what America especially tries to sell us is having that trophy, because you can kind of like hide the journey, if that makes sense, versus like if you just imagine if it's like, okay, Matt, I could put you up on stage at the NBA finals when they deliver the trophies, right? Like you could hold the trophy, but like everybody would know you didn't play in the game. They'd be like, look at like, who's that white dude in a turtleneck, right? Like, but he's got a trophy, right? The tricky part.
How dare you expose my inner fantasy, my deepest fantasy, just to lift the trophy with the team. You're like, we did it. Yeah, no, absolutely, man. Absolutely. And it gets down to that thing where that you can start to really sift through at that point how much of what you're saying you want is just purely externally driven versus like how much of it is actually coming from within you to be like, yeah, this would be awesome and this is why.
Hey dudes, sorry for the interruption here. Just wanted to let you know, if you want to join our pro team, go to romasteam.com/pro. You can help support the channel. You will also get access to exclusive content, masterminds, one-on-one sessions, etc. All right, back to the episode.
Yeah, and I give so much credit to Ray, because Ray has been extremely candid with his sort of like his position and with his wife and so on. And he said many times on this podcast where like eventually he just reached a limit where he's like I feel like I haven't earned this. Like, so I'm giving back I'm not going to lease the Mercedes anymore. I'm going to stick to the Prius. I'm going to build my way up from here. And dude, I think that's so much harder than what like somebody in my position is doing, right? Like I give Ray a ton of credit, because that must be so hard, because he was standing on the trophy stand. But the interesting part about the world is they can't tell whether or not you've played the game, except for like, you haven't played the game. And this is not comment towards Ray, but it's like, you have not played the game, and then others can start to feel, right? Or like you have to twist your story a little bit, or it's like, I was talking to somebody recently, and we're having a conversation, and it came up in the group of like, oh, this is a beautiful house. Like, what rate did you get on your mortgage, right? And the guy's like, we paid cash. Now, he wasn't being a jerk about it, but then, I was like, oh, wow. Like, that gives a certain impression. It's like, wow, you paid cash like you're in your 30s, bro. This is a big house. And then a week later, I found out that mommy and daddy paid cash. Yeah, dude. And that, like, to me, like, it took something away from, not, like, I'm not judging him necessarily, but there was like, you didn't play the sport, bro. You tried to act like you played the sport. Now you're outed. And probably people will keep finding. And that, I don't know. I just don't like that.
Yeah, and there's a way. I always thought there's a way to go about that where, if that's people's reality, then I feel like they should just become very, like, I think I've said this before, like, just like a Roman senator's son, and be like, my family prospers, this is the prosper of my family. Like, you can go about that in a way that's, like, exactly like you're saying, like, I paid cash. It's like, dude, no, you didn't. And it's like, if you did, what are you up to? How'd you do that? And I just want to address this really quick. There's a comment here. Right in the thing, it says, wealthy people get to the top because they manipulate wealth, not just possess it. It's like, well, in my opinion, that's very black and white thinking. And it's like, when you say wealthy people, do you mean like the 0.1% of people? Do you mean like people who are like small business owners? Because a small business owner can become wealthy. It's like, they start making like a few $100,000 a year. So I would say, this is something I feel like a lot of people get hung up on.
Yes.
Where it's like,
it's a great topic, dude.
Wealthy people, they're just evil. And it's like, dude, like, and you can go into like Bill Gates and all that stuff, and it's like you can really look into that and you can chase that down. If you're an investigative journalist, great. But if you're an average dude trying to make some money and kind of get yourself started up, it's like the worst possible thing you can think of, just because it starts to taint the whole endeavor, which takes fortitude and kind of like, putting yourself out there. It's a very easy excuse to sit on your ass and not do anything, because you're like, oh, that's just for evil billionaires. It's like, dude, so you're telling me the guy who starts a plumbing company, an HVAC company, or starts his own starts to do like a electrical repairs, he's evilly and he's manipulating wealth? It's like, no, dude. That person's putting themselves out there. Like, not everything's so binary and black and white. Just because there's a few people who obviously are greedy and do horrible things with their wealth doesn't mean that kind of like, oh, that's the only way to get to the top. And that's, just the idea of the top. It's like, to me, it's bullshit. That's a construction in your head that doesn't exist, and it's like, you know, for me it's a negative filter that excuses people of not doing anything or never throwing their hat in the ring because the game's rigged. It's like, dude, the Celts held Rome down for like 3 days. These dudes that lived in the plains and just like, you know, were just like making their clothes out of moleskins took down Rome. So it's like, you'd be surprised, dude. And they weren't sitting around like, this is unfair. They were like, dude, we could take down Rome. And they got it for a couple of days and they probably all got their heads cut off. But they were in there and they were running shit for like a week.
Yeah, Matt, I think you're spot on. And to I think John wrote the comment. And I say this from a very loving position because I had to deal with those same things, right? Like, because all of the movies that I watched about wealth, it's like I literally even to my adult life, like I think I told you, Matt, like I felt Jack from the Titanic, like Leonardo DiCaprio from the Titanic, right? That somehow I had escaped like the bottom rung of the ship and like snuck my way up to the top, and it's like felt like it didn't belong, like all this kind of stuff. And I do think that's because of, honestly, I legitimately think it's because of marketing. You know, it's like people love to throw stones at a common enemy. So when you are at a certain level and you look at like the Bezoses of the world, and so you're just waiting for him to mess up so you can launch like this full-blown attack and narrative on him. So and I hate saying that it's more of an excuse for the people who can't get there, but I can definitely tell you that because we could debate that all day long, but I can definitely tell you it did not serve me to have that mindset of like, oh, the wealthy got there by cheating and they're suppressing me. Now, that's also not to say like it's not easy, right? Like I do think I've had the luck and fortune and of people pushing me along the way to get to like incrementally next level. It's been extremely difficult. I'm not going to say it hasn't, but it also hasn't been impossible, right? It's been more sacrifice than anything. And Matt, you're the same way, right? Like, so whenever I perceive that there's going to be this invisible glass ceiling above me, there's not. It's just I have to figure out the maneuvering around it, but it's not it's not manipulative. It's just like, of course, if you want to go and make $100,000, right, you're going to have to level up your skill sets that are equivalent to the marketplace of making $100,000. But I can tell you that it's dramatically easier than I thought it would be, because the people at the next level, there's fewer and there's fewer and there's fewer, just for no other reason than it's like they want to spend time with their families or they want to go out to the bar with their friends, right? And hell yeah, like go and do that stuff. So there's actually, in my opinion, there's less competition the more you grow.
That makes sense. And honestly, to be fair too to John, maybe he meant like it's not just about possessing wealth, but it's knowing how to use it. So I might have read like a negative slant into that. He's saying you could claim knowledge of HVAC and plumbing as wealth, and it's like, at that point I'm like, all right. But I see what you're saying. I don't mean to like come down on you, but I come across, maybe I misread that, but I come across that all the time of like, these billionaires, and you could make a solid case, and if that's that there are a lot of people who use wealth in a almost fiendish way and kind of like mess things up for everybody else. It's like, yeah, I'm sure that's been the case throughout human civilization since the dawn of it. There's been people who get so many resources that they empower and dominate and all that stuff. But it's also like, if that's truly the case, do you really think sitting on your ass doing nothing is the thing? You know what I mean? So it all breaks down to like, well, you got to do stuff regardless of what do you imagine the scenario is or what you genuinely think it is. But it's like, yeah, man, I genuinely think that, like, again, just the money thing. It's like, it's great. You want to have money, you want to do stuff, but then you go like, you build yourself up, you gain money, you gain some place in the world that you feel proud of by whatever metric you do, or however you measure that. But then it's like you were saying, or we kind of talked about a little bit, when, it becomes apparent when, like, say you just transfer all that wealth to a child. Now it's like, does that person lack those inner resources? How does that come off? Like you were saying, Wes, like, yeah, I paid cash for this. It's like, dude,
right.
Just be out and open and say, yeah, man, my family's wealthy. They paid for it. This is great. Pretty awesome stuff. If someone said that to me, I'd be like, fuck, that's awesome, dude. That rules.
Yeah.
That rules.
Yeah, I think the moral of the story is play the game that you love to play in perpetuity. So there's something in finance called reinvestment risk. And it's like it's an actual mathematical principle in finance. It's basically saying that, like, if an investment has a certain return, you have to factor in the risk of not being able to invest in it, let's say next year, right? So let's say you only have a chance to invest in I don't know, a piece of real estate, but then next year it's going to be sold. Well, then you're going to be forced to have what's called reinvestment risk, which is take that capital because it's going to be uninvested at the time of that sale, and you have to figure out an alternative to invest it in, right? Does that make sense?
No, say that one more time.
So reinvestment risk is like, let's say you have two assets, right? Let's say one asset, this piece of real estate right here, you can invest in, it's going to give you 10% return, but only for a year, because then the property, you're going to have to sell the property because of the limited partnership that you're buying in, whatever reason, right? And then you have this property over here, but it's only going to give you 8% return, right? So it's less return. But let's just say it's a rental property and you're going to keep it forever. That's the plan, right? Your partners are going to keep it forever. Well, a lot of people would say, well, take the higher return property. Well, it's like, no, because you're only going to get that, let's say, quote, guaranteed for a year. And then you have to figure out an alternative. So you might then have to take that money and then invest in a property that's only worth 3% rate return. Right. So you might want to be, so you have to actually weigh that. And this is why I love finance, because you have to start to quantify more subjective things. Right. It's like this really nice marriage between math and subjectivity. So it's the same thing in your career or in your business, et cetera. It's like a lot of people want to chase these gold shiny objects. But if I had to ask you, it's like, well, tell me how long that's going to last, or how long could you play that game? Right, like I see this all the time. Oh, well, I'll just go start this business and I'll do it for like a year or two. It's like, first of all, it's going to take you 2 years to even get it off the ground. Like, clearly you've never started a business before. But let's just say that plays out. Okay, well then what are you going to do after 2 years? Right, then you have to throw that skill set away. Let's just say potentially, because it's whatever. It's some sort of gold rush scenario, and then you have the reinvestment risk of then taking your skill and trying to apply it to another area. I will take the guy who creates the HVAC company and says, I'm just going to do this for the rest of my life. I'll take him every day of the week if he's ambitious, or I'll take your dad every single day of the week, right? Over the guy who's just trying to hit it like a quick home run over a year, because the reinvestment risk is too high.
That makes sense. Yeah, you got to constantly find the next thing and everything like that.
Yeah.
And again, this is a, dude, I mean, it really, I'm trying to thread the common thread between the two things, and it's like what basically what I think you're saying is that, like, there's something to be said for kind of doing the work of kind of doing a deep enough self-inventory where you find the thing that you can do over the long haul steadily, rather than develop within that, rather than trying to kind of sit on the periphery of everything and wait till you see like that one perfect easy ride. It's like, bro, that bus isn't coming. I've waited for that bus for a decade.
Yep.
It's not coming. It's not there. You know, so it's like, it's real. That's what Ray said. Pick skills over the jackpot, man. It's like, fuck, man. It's so true.
Yep.
It's very true. And again, I don't want to, I feel badly because I feel like I kind of like mischaracterized what John was saying. But I'm also confused about what you were saying initially. So what, John, if you want to clarify, because I took that and went in like a whole different direction because it just reminded me of something. So again, I don't want to like use your thing as a, as a springboard, but I am also curious, like what do you mean then when you are saying by manipulating wealth?
Yeah. And while he comes back, Matt, I think your comment, regardless of what John meant, I think you and I are on the same page of like, let's pick apart the idea of like, you just can't make it. Like all evil people are wealthy and they manipulate things. And unless you want to be one of those people, like you can't make progress. I think that might have been the nucleus of like.
Well, but here's the thing that gets people into weirder, and I've done the same thing myself, but it's like, you get into almost this perverse pleasure, almost like by not doing well, you're then therefore a good person, and then people who are doing well are therefore bad. And it's like, dude, that's a dangerous way of thinking just for yourself personally. It's like, hey, it's, is it true? Who knows? I don't know. But it's like, I've messed around with that kind of thinking when I was younger, and I genuinely think like people should really stop and consider. And it's also like when they say, oh, these people could solve all the world's problems by giving away their money. It's like, yes, they could, but it's like, how much have you given away? Well, I don't have that much. Well, have you given a little bit? It's like, no, it's like,
proportional amount.
I do the same thing. I think about how much money. I'm like, I don't give anyone any money. It's like, obviously I lend money to people and I help people here and there, but it's like, I don't do any charities, so it's like, it's easy to say. Oh, so I'm saying the wealthy don't just possess wealth, but can manipulate it, serve the needs. Yeah, sure. Okay. So he's just saying the wealthy can manipulate it to serve their needs. Sure.
Yeah, and I think the trigger word might be manipulate. Yeah, I think that's the trigger word. Because I can tell you, like, obviously the industry that I work in, I've met, I don't even know how many millionaires and multi-millionaires, and I think only one of them was evil, like who would actually fit the definition of like maniacal.
He was genuinely evil.
Oh, dude, he's like, I actually really like him. It was conversations like out of a movie, right? Like, and he would consistently say like, I'm not a megalomaniac or anything. I'm like, that's exactly what a megalomaniac would say. Yeah. And there's like every indicator says that you are exactly that. It was pretty cool conversation. So like, but he wasn't being evil to like hurt anybody. It's just like constantly strategizing and like wanting to be secretive, like on how he can build his own wealth. It's like, hell yeah, man, like do your thing. It's not how I would personally play the game. But anyway, out of the, I don't know, hundreds, maybe even more, right, of like rich people, every single one of them, except for that guy, like none of them have fit the stereotypical narrative of what Hollywood teaches us about rich people. Mm. And by the way, you would never know that most of them have, 95% of them, you would never be able to tell how much money they have. True. Yeah. So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, man. And again, it's one of those things where that's kind of my one like trigger with that. It's like I've operated out of that framework. Like I saw someone else like fuck paying taxes, all this stuff. It's like, hey man, you can do that too. I did the same exact thing, but what happens is then it's like now you got to hide money you make. Now you got to skip out on opportunities, and it's like I will say it's infinitely easier just to be like, all right, I accept the fact that I'm paying these taxes. Let me worry more about what I'm actually doing with my life and self than like whether I pay 5% or 30% of my money away. And it sounds crazy. If you had asked me that 10 years ago, I'd be like, fuck that. I'm not fucking paying blah, blah, blah. But it's like, I don't like fret about the tax code. I don't really care. But it's like, I'm here to exist and do a certain thing. I'm on a mission. Whether someone's taking 20, 30, 40, if they start taking 70%, I'm like, what the fuck? That's too much. But it's like, it genuinely doesn't affect my life. I thought it did, and I did all these crazy maneuvers and all this dodging and dipping and all this stuff, and it just made me not kind of put myself out there as much, since you're kind of like in the shadows, and it's not good.
Can we have a quick conversation about taxes?
Yes, because
I feel like this is a really good topic to have in a goals group. Like I have found that when most people talk about taxes, they have zero clue of what they're actually talking about. And I'm not saying that I do. I'm not a CPA. Right, but like to understand it at a baseline level, I think is very important. So I have people in my family who think I'm like the evil, maniacal, megalomaniac type of guy. So like we get in this conversation about taxes. So the way our tax system works is basically, I believe it's called like progressive taxes. So like the more money you make, the larger. Here's the thing: the more money you make, the larger percentage you pay in taxes. This is crazy. Right, like if we were to have a tribe, if all of us on this call right now were to go to an island and we're say, hey, let's come up with a situation, right, where we're gonna all have to share like a piece of what we make to the overall pot, so it can be like redistributed and buy stuff like build roads, etc. Right? Ray said gay island. So if you think about this, right, that would mean, okay, the first option we could have is everybody pay a flat tax. Like let's just say $10, right? That could probably seem reasonable to some people. It's like, okay, like, well, if everybody just throws $10 into the pot, great. That's how we would go in on buying pizza, right? If we're all like having a pizza party tonight, we'd say, hey, we're gonna get a pizza. Like Matt, you throw in $10, I'll throw in $10, etc. Right? That's not what the US does. Instead, what they say is, okay, let's pay a percentage of what you make. So then we're buying that same pizza, and Matt, I say, hey man, you make more money than me, so you pay. So we're gonna do 10%. Well, now that's $20 for you. That's $10 for me, let's say. You would probably start to feel a little funky about that. Do you know what I mean? You're like, dude, like we're just buying pizza. Why does it matter? Like imagine that happened in every single scenario that you ever went to. Like, hey, Matt, we're going to dinner. So you make more money than everybody else. So you pay more dollars because it's percentage based. So you'd start, I'd imagine you'd start feeling a little funky about that. You know what I mean? But then that doesn't stop there. Right? So instead of it being percentage based, it's Matt, the more money you make, the more percentage you will pay. Right? That's why we have a progressive system. So like the first, let's say the first $10 you make, we're going to tax you at 5%. The next $10 you make, we're going to tax you at 15%. The next $10, 20%, and so on. that's how you get to like the top marginal tax rate, I think, is like if you live in New York, maybe even California, you're around 54%. Right. So you're paying massively more money than, let's say, people at lower rungs, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. But then you talk to people and they're like, oh, well, rich people should pay more taxes. Like they do. Right. Like massively more. And not just like a percentage is almost crazy to me, but then an increasing percentage on top of it's like, holy shit. And like, you know, Matt, you're like, if people don't mind me saying this, like you're starting to see what that is, right? Like I'm seeing what that is. Like it is not you start to say like, how is this fair? Right. But it's very easy to look from the bottom. Like it was very easy for me, like when I was a kid or like, you know, college and so on, to be like, oh, well, they should pay more. It's like, dude, do the math. It's really crazy.
Yeah, I think the idea that it all boils down to is that everyone who makes more than me should. And like I used to make fun of my professor in social work school because this guy was wealthy, man. He like they were well to do, lived out in Bryn Mawr, nice guy. But he'd be like, and they got to tax the rich. I'm like, bro, you're rich. He's like, it's everyone. It's just whoever makes just above me should pay their fair share. And you know, it's just human psychology. None of us, you know, none of us want to give. You know, if you have a bunch of squirrels and you're like, yo, divvy up those nuts, they're just like. You know, they want to hold all of them. It makes sense. But yeah, I agree, man. I think like, what am I trying to say? I guess like here, put it this way. When I was younger, I think I've talked about this before. When I was going into college, I decided to switch majors. And it was just because I want to make $100,000 a year when I graduate. That was as much as I'd planned. Before that, I was going to grow weed and move to Brazil. Didn't exactly. Actually, that came in later. Understand. But I remember, like, this is my brain back then. It's like, I want to make $100,000, and if I had any adult around me to be like, why? I'd have been like, it's $100,000. I couldn't even tell you how much that was a week. I'd be like, just $100,000. I just thought that like somehow within that was like, I'll have freedom and my problems will go away. That's really what I kind of wanted. But in my head, it was just $100,000. And, you know, when you're making decisions based on those numbers, when you're kind of ignoring all of like, how do you feel about this? What do you think about relationships? Who would you like to be around? What actually interests you? When you kind of throw all that shit away and go like, oh, I want $100,000. It just was, for me, was kind of like, it just led to a bunch of fucking like scratching around where I'm just kind of like, you know, not really getting anywhere, not doing anything. I have this arbitrary number in my head because like people told me that's like, if you make that, you got it made. Right. And it's like, you know, so it's like when we start doing the same thing applies to like, oh, I'm going to save, you know, if I don't pay taxes, I can get around this by not reporting this and not, you know, just taking cash. And at the end of the day, it's like, okay, cool. You've just collected a bunch of pieces of paper. And again, money, obviously you can do stuff with money and that's cool. But without an actual plan, you're just collecting a bunch of pieces of paper. Unless you have a trip saved and all this stuff. And it's, again, I'm not, I genuinely, this is how I personally feel. I could care less. If you're like, I've hidden all this stuff, I'm all cash, cool, knock yourself out. But it's like, why did you do that? Is there some deep overarching theme and like, and what else is that preventing you from doing anything else? That's all I would say. You know, say you own a place, you own a nail salon, all cash, everything's cool. All right, let's open up another one and expand. I can't get a loan because I'm all cash. Okay, that place goes to shit. Now you're fucked. You know what I mean? So it's like, I would, you know, obviously if you have your core values and principles, stick to them. Mm-hmm. But always examine the functionality of them, because I did the same thing. I did it for years. You're like, fuck that, I'm not paying shit. I avoided it a lot, and it's like, I'm much happier just working on the stuff I want to work on and just being like, here, you know. And now if it starts to impede my standard of living, you know, that's a whole different thing. If I'm being taxed to the point where like I can't afford something that I find personally meaningful, all right, let's go. And then again, of course, there's a whole discussion on like how they should be spent. Is there waste? You know, when these funnels that go from like the tax go all the way down to the schools, have people siphon things off? Of course. But it's like, again, none of that stuff gets addressed by kind of, you know, armchair quarterbacking and just being like, you know, so.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I can tell you right now, knowing of a handful of cases where people went to jail for what is called tax evasion, which is different than saying, oh, my accountant, like, you know, it was a gray area of like, is it this business expense or is it, obviously, like, you have to use your judgment along with your accountant. But tax evasion, like literally saying like, oh, I own a pizza shop and I just like, I don't report 70% of my income. Like, that's called tax evasion. And
so they didn't just like write off a pair of headphones.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Thank God. But yeah.
Yeah.
So they're hiding it.
Yeah, exactly. Like just evading taxes. I'm not going to say the person's business, but there's a famous pizza shop back east that was on many boardwalks, and Matt, I'm sure you know of it. Like he went to jail for tax evasion, right?
Really?
Because so and like it's you're almost admitting to wanting to play the game small because you basically can't get above a certain level of critical mass, right? Like because eventually, just like what you're saying, Matt, you will reach obstacles that you will either have to like unwind what you did, which is like good luck doing that, right? Because then to unwind it, you have to admit that you did it. So like you have to like right, you could just imagine.
There's also when you ask that person too, because again, it's like you're always kind of living in this scenario you built for yourself, like the thing you imagined for yourself when you were younger and dumber. So a person probably started out was like and the impulse to do that I completely understand and sympathize with, because it's like you're brought into a world, people around you are like they're kind of paranoid, like we got to hide this, we got to do this, like that. I get that, I understand where that comes from, but it's like, so you're operating under that paradigm, everything's going well, you're like, yes, I'm so smart, I'm getting around all this stuff. But once you actually, like, once that person if it's the pizza thing I'm thinking of, once you have all the money that person has, was it worth to miss like your kids' fifth, 6th, and 7th grade because you're in federal prison for taxes? No.
Oh, dude.
Like, what the hell? You got there sitting there like, I have cash, I have like a cool swimming pool. Now I missed, and you have to calculate that risk. Now, if for somebody, in order to like, I tip my hat to anyone who does take wild risks like that, but it's like the older you get, you're really playing with fucking fire, and the problem is you don't realize you're playing with fire when you're younger, but it's like it'll catch up to you, man.
Oh, dude, I tell clients all the time, like the utility of sleep and the utility of reputation. Those are the two, and autonomy, right? Like those 3 things you never put on the table, ever. I will never bet my sleep. I will never bet my reputation. I will never bet my autonomy, right? Like that. Those are the worst things to bet, because the more, after you get to a certain level, it's just Maslow's hierarchy of needs. After you get to a certain level, there is no real utility other than winning the game, which I find like I love that. But I would never bet my reputation on it. I literally know a person right now who his father's reputation has preceded his son's reputation, and his son is psychologically impacted from it, right? Because his father did some shady shit back in the day, where like, and it ruined his reputation all around where I live. Like, I've heard it from several people, which is crazy. That's how toxic and cancerous a broken reputation can get, and it's now affecting his children. Who is his son is 36 years old.
Yeah, man. Yeah, there was something I was reading. I forget what it was. It was basically saying that how it's like improving your life is such an uphill trudge, but like you can ruin it in the blink of an eye, like so hard. If you're just like to look at the impact of like, doing something that like devastates your life, and the impact of like being wildly successful, going up is like, that's an absolute trudge with ice picks in the mountain. But like, dude, all you gotta do is let go and you can like fly right back to the ground. It's like, it's amazing what you can do, and how these little decisions you make every day that you justify in your head. And again, I was just writing about that this morning. It's like, dude, the cool guy in college is eventually an alcoholic. The cool party girl, eventually is like blowing, not always, but it's like that little thing of like, oh, I like to have a couple drinks and this and that. It's like, once you throw like another generation underneath you in the mix, this is devastation.
Yep.
It's like, oh, I like to get hammered. It's like, yeah, now there's a kid watching you, now it's terrifying them.
Yep.
So it's like, if you don't start, these habits don't just magically change once you have a family. It's like you have to kind of start. It's very hard to kind of, pull yourself out of the morass of your habits and everything.
Yeah, Warren Buffett says it takes 15 years to build a reputation, 15 minutes to tear it down. It's very true.
Yeah, man, it's tough. It's tough.
And the cool thing is, man, like, and I put your dad in this category. When you literally think of your reputation as one of, if not your biggest assets, the compounding that comes from that is crazy. Right? Like I'm just started. I see it with my partner, right? Like business will come to him without marketing, without like saying anything, just like literally every single week, business flows in the door because he has got such an outstanding reputation for 5 decades.
Yep.
And like, I don't think he might be like the money, right, that is made from that alone is crazy.
Yes.
It's absolutely crazy because he refuses to sacrifice his reputation, and he won't do like sleazy marketing techniques that will get you some dollars up front, but they're kind of edgy, you know, like that sort of thing, like making up things. Like, dude, I hate when marketers, this is the problem with marketing. If anybody's studying marketing out there, like, they will literally teach you, like, oh, like, send an email out that says, they have this webinar tomorrow and there's only 5 seats left, when really there's not. You know, and it's like, you got to RSVP by tonight at midnight. And then next morning they're like, oh, like, you know, we actually had some more seats open up. It's like, you liar, you say that about every single event. Right, that starts to deteriorate that person's reputation. Oh yeah. So even
he's going to the area of the basement, he takes a dump in sometimes to get him out of it. Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, dude.
So
100%.
just little things like that, man. Just don't do it. It's not like,
dude, think about it personally. When you deal with someone who does something for you, and they do a good job, and they don't fuck you over, it's like, I mean, you're always like, oh, this guy did a great job. Like, we had a guy who did like a backsplash in our kitchen, did like little tiles, came in. He was quick. It wasn't like, you know, it was like a decent price. But like, dude, as soon as you, and you know, it's like, oh, this guy was good, this guy. As soon as you hold the deposit, I always think of contracting. You get a deposit, and you don't pay, dude. It goes around. That word goes around everybody, dude.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I've watched people before, especially like in the other thing. You get guys, developers. A lot of developers, a lot of times, will just not pay. They'll just they like to get people to do all the work, and they just like they call it the chop. Yep. I could just not pay that. I could just not pay that guy. Dude, I've seen it before. I've watched my dad talking to people like, that motherfucker hasn't paid me. Watch out. And there's people who will be like, oh, I'm gonna take my tools off his job right now. Like, I'm done. And they'll walk out. Like, I heard you're not paying people. I'm out of here. Yep. And it's like, dude, your shit dries up so fucking fast. But if you're same thing, you're somebody who's like, you honor your word, you pay people what you're supposed to pay them, you don't fuck them. You're also honest. If someone sucks, you're like, hey, you know, that sucks. I'm not paying for that. But it's like, dude, it's amazing what that can do over time. And, you know, it's not going to, like, skyrocket you to the top or whatever. Yep. You know, again, I hate that phrase, but, like, it pays dividends, man, just to, like, not fuck people over. And it's like, you know.
It's actually incredibly simple how most, if not all, things come down to the fundamentals. Like, if I look at basketball, when I studied Jordan or I studied Kobe or LeBron or whoever when I was playing basketball, they're doing only a handful of moves, right? Like, same thing with dance. Same thing with business, same thing with interpersonal relationships. Like, just stick to the fundamentals and get really, really good at them, and don't get distracted when you're like tempted to not do it.
Yeah, man, it really is. It's like, you know, because the trick of sticking to the fundamentals is, how do you keep your mind's antennas always looking for stuff? It's like, how do you settle that thing down? You know, kind of be like, hey, no, let's keep doing this.
Yeah. And I think a good example maybe that some guys are dealing with, I hope this hits somebody, it's like, if you owe somebody money and you're like, you just haven't given it back to them because you're waiting for them to say like to remind you, it's like, go give them their money. If you owe anybody money right now, go give them their money. You'd be amazed at how much they're like, oh, like, thanks, man. Like, you know, just doing stand-up stuff like that, treating others like you would want to be treated, and doing it preemptively, not in reaction to their request. Whatever you owe somebody, go and give it back right now. And plus interest, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, the craziest thing is, like, I mean, if you really want to get, you know, this is a thing I think about constantly, is that, like, you know, we were living in the jungle, you know, we were, like, living animal lives for the most part. Human beings started getting a little smarter, you know, kind of really sucked getting eaten by lions and tigers and all this stuff. And then, like, somewhere, you know, thousands of years ago, people came up with a code of conduct, you know, the very early signs of, you know, there's, like, cannibalism, all kinds of crazy shit. But eventually that thinking got refined of a code of conduct, like, that was, like, outside of our animal instincts, that led to, like, insane life improvements, and, like, they eventually led from human beings, you know, eventually, like, almost separating themselves on some level from, like, animal life. And it's like, those truths are really basic, man. It's like, treat people kindly, be nice to people, you know, don't steal, don't lie, and all that stuff. And it's like, it's amazing how old those concepts are. And if you look at what they've done for humans as a species, they've been amazing for us as a species. So, like, when you put them in your own life and really genuinely try to practice them, my argument is that they do the same for you on, like, the individual level.
Yeah, I think, and there's a really good concept around that that I call closing loops. And I constantly fail at this. So closing loops with interpersonal relationships as best as you can, and doing it so the person remembers you in the best version of you that they could. And this just bit me in the ass, for example. So like there was this guy who I was trying to get him as an investor, and he's worth a lot of money. So it was like I was definitely swinging above my weight class or punching above my weight class. And anyway, like this large institution ended up getting him over. But he sent me an email an hour before we were supposed to meet. It was supposed to be our final pitch meeting, right? And he's like, "Hey, just so you know, like this bank, like, you know, convinced me over here because they could basically cut my mortgage, right? You know, which is like, damn it, right? Like that's it's a low blow for me, but it's weapons that I don't have, right? Like,
Sure.
So anyway, what I should have done is sent him an email saying, "Hey, you know, Mr. X, Y, and Z, thank you so much for letting me know. No biggie. I'm here for you, you know, when you need me." I should have done that. But because I was like, oh, like in my head, I was like, you know, all right, whatever. Like that guy's off the table. Like move on to the next one. Like I'm just going to like make up, you know, for on offense on the other end. Instead of taking that 10 seconds to write that email and to like really build up my reputation with him, I didn't, only because I kind of wrote him off at that point. And then he shows up to our freaking Christmas party 2 days later, dating one of our other clients. You know, now don't get me wrong. It's like my cherry. It would have been a cherry on top. It's not like I was really. He was almost rude to me, like canceling the meeting an hour before our meeting. But that doesn't matter, right?
You didn't say like fuck you. Yeah.
No, but like that's the point. Like I should have closed the loop in a very positive way. So then eventually, right, like I could have another at bat. And I do think I made up for it in the Christmas party. But that's just an example. Like I'm not exactly perfect at this, and I don't think anybody is. In fact, I'm pretty bad at it, but like I try to remember, like close the loops positively. Don't leave people in a purgatory, or don't leave people with a bad taste in their mouth around you, because eventually it will bite you in the ass.
For sure. Well, dude, what's the plan this week? Oh, you said you're doing Christmas stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
80-20, 80% Christmas, 20% work. I was supposed to take off this week, but I got to keep my eyes on the market. So,
Hell yeah.
How about you, buddy?
I am just doing my writing project, man, every day. I'm going to try to also get a one of those Patreon solo eps out. So my goal is to get a week's worth of like chapters done. So then that on like Friday or so, I can kind of chill. I also have a comedy shows and live podcasts. So really it's like the writing's number one. If I can eke out a Patreon episode, fantastic. And then the podcast and stand-up stuff will also take up some time. So that's my goal. 5 chapters done, Patreon episode ideally. And definitely do the comedy shows. Other than that, then to start like making sure I kind of get all my Christmas stuff and, you know, blah, blah, blah. So.
Yep, 100%, man. And then just a final note to Ray. Closing the loop has helped me tremendously. And for guys who are interested in that topic, even closing the loop on, like, if somebody asks you to do something, as best as you can, try to give them a definitive answer, not a maybe.
Yeah.
Right, like, and then figure out a way to do it in a nice way. Hey, I just can't do that right now. Like, or you wouldn't want me to do it right now because I'm so busy. I would end up not hitting the deadline for you, blah, blah, blah. And then if you do accept something on board and you can no longer finish it, close the loop as quickly as possible. Or like call Matt, you know, I'll call Matt and say, hey, man, I just can't do that. I'm so sorry, but I want to give you the maximal time to find somebody else to do it, right? Instead of like trying to convince yourself you're going to be able to do it last minute. So anyway, closing the loop has been a huge benefit in my life.
Yeah, it's like closing tabs in a browser. You're just like closing tabs in your browser. Like, all right, that's, I don't have to think about that. It's not burning the back of my mind. The other thing, too, I can't get over this, was last week when you're saying basically like just a simple question like, did I give today my all? It's like, did I give it my all today? And it's like, I've been really trying to like hit those, you know, and again, I'm my own judge of that, but I know when I did and when I didn't. And I've been trying to get during the business week 5 out of 5 of those. And then, you know, I rest up on the weekend, but it's like, so I would say to everyone, I would continue filtering your day through that, you know, even if you got to like sit there at nighttime and you got to ask yourself, like, did I give today my all among whatever dimensions that I'm trying to do, like physical, work, blah, blah, blah.
Hell yeah. That dude, I still have your skull. Matt gave me a skull last year. I put it on my little skull. I put it on my nightstand and I look at that every night and just like, like if I were to die today, would I be happy? So appreciate that, brother.
Of course.
All right, dudes. Have a great week.
Later on. See ya.
Later.